Thousands of turbines now line the North Sea, a massive infrastructure project designed to reshape how an entire continent powers its economy. The scale of this deployment is reflected in the data. By 2024, renewable sources hit a major milestone, providing a record 47% of the European Union's total electricity generation. But right beneath this expanding grid, a different trend is emerging. The very industries these turbines were built to power are beginning to shut down. The policies designed to put Europe at the forefront of the green transition are now colliding with the survival of its manufacturing base. This creates a unique tension. Europe is setting global records for ecological progress while simultaneously watching its industrial capacity steadily contract. To see why factories are closing, we have to look past the environmental targets and examine the primary cost of doing business: the electricity bill. This chart shows the price of industrial power across major global markets. In the EU, industrial electricity averages €199 per megawatt-hour. Global competitors face a lighter burden. That same megawatt-hour costs €82 in China and €75 in the United States. For energy-intensive sectors like steel and chemicals, electricity is the single largest input cost. Paying nearly triple the price of your rivals creates a structural deficit that erodes the profitability of every unit produced. Abundant green energy loses its economic value if the market price effectively locks domestic manufacturing out of the global competition. If Europe is installing so much clean technology, it should be the primary beneficiary of the manufacturing boom. But the local supply chain tells a different story. Today, less than 2% of European solar demand is actually met by panels produced within the Union. The physical hardware of the European transition is manufactured elsewhere. China currently controls over 80% of global solar module production. This has substituted Europe's old reliance on Russian gas with a new, near-total dependency on Chinese green technology. To counter this, some member states attempted to build stable, domestic baseload power that doesn't depend on the weather, most notably through a renewed push into nuclear energy. The Flamanville EPR in France was supposed to be the flagship of this effort, a massive reactor providing low-carbon, around-the-clock power. But the project became a lesson in mismanagement. Originally budgeted at €3.3 billion, the final cost ballooned to €23.7 billion, arriving 12 years behind schedule. Between surrendering the hardware supply chain and failing to execute its own baseload infrastructure, Europe has lost control over the most critical parts of its energy future. When we look back at the environmental triumph from Act 1, we have to account for where the emissions actually went. Europe lowered its territorial footprint, but global totals tell a different story. Many European factories aren't truly eliminating their carbon footprint. They are relocating it to regions that rely on cheaper, fossil fuel-heavy grids. This creates a loop where Europe imports green technology manufactured in coal-powered plants abroad, just to meet its own domestic environmental targets at home. Relocating production to countries with dirtier energy grids simply moves emissions across a geographic border while draining Europe's own industrial capacity. European policymakers are now facing a choice between a continued industrial retreat or a complete redesign of their strategy. Restoring competitiveness requires energy policy to move away from punitive pricing and toward a mix of renewables and baseload power that domestic industry can actually afford. Without cost-competitive energy, the European continent risks becoming a museum of green intentions rather than an economic power. For a true resurgence, clean energy must transition from an ideological goal into the practical foundation of a competitive European industrial base.